My name is Christine. In the community, they call me Dr. K because my last name is hard.
Yeah.
And so we go by Dr. K. It's dubbed a couple years ago and it has just kind of stuck. And as I was prepping for today, I really wanted to share with you a story that has really resonated with a lot of people as I've really thought through leadership and what it means to be an effective leader. And the story has been dubbed the sushi crisis of 2020. And I'm excited to share with you today because there's going to be a lot of hopefully relatable moments, but also some really key reminders that will be a really important tool in your leadership practice. So in February of 2020, I had achieved a huge goal that I had been waiting and working towards for 10 years. And I started my dream job, or I thought it was my dream job anyway. And I was really excited to be working from home for the first time. And my office mates were four-legged furry family members. And it was quiet in the house. And I got to get laundry done and the crock pot started and all this stuff. Like, it just felt better. As a mom of three boys, it felt more balanced for me for the first time in a really long time in my professional career. I just was like, I can breathe. I can do all the things. And if that date resonates with you, and it should, February of 2020 was right before the world changed. And so I got into this role. I started to breathe freely. I felt good. And then March of 2020 happened. March 13th specifically of 2020 happened. And all the news started to come out that schools were going to be shut down and we were not going to be sure if there was groceries. And if you recall, there was a toilet paper crisis and people were frantic. People were nervous. But I thought to myself, I got this. Because I'm up here, I'm in my very best self. I have achieved something huge. I feel great. I was like, cool, I can handle an inconvenience. No problem. It's so funny. It's a little inconvenience. Well, a couple weeks went by and they were like, just joking. We're also not reopening the schools after spring break. And I thought, well, that is more inconvenient now. That is multiple inconveniences. So I'm feeling the pressure of it. I'm feeling the stress of it. I started busting out tools and resources, and I had the clipboard of fun on one wall, and I had notes on the other wall that showed when you were allowed to interrupt mom's Zoom calls. It was when Jason Momoa was delivering wine. That was when you could interrupt my Zoom calls. That was it. Or if somebody was bleeding, I was like, that seems reasonable as well. And then we got into June and the school year was wrapping up and everybody was like, well, at least it's summer break. At least there's no Zoom school. Really? That was the bar that we had set all of a sudden? So summer break went along. I'll be really honest. Summer break is always really stressful for me as a working mom. I always feel really overwhelmed with the number of snacks and the amount of demands and the driving people all the places. It's really a lot sometimes. And as the end of summer was approaching, there was rumors starting to float around that maybe we also were not opening up, at least not in my state. My state is Oregon, and we lagged the market, for lack of a better term. And we decided not to open the schools. And I thought, oh no. I was feeling really tired, really overwhelmed, really worn out. I felt like I was thinking for 5 people every day at least, right? That doesn't even count the work that I was doing. That was just at home because people were like, what's my snack? What am I going to do? I'm a little bit bored. I can't remember where my shoes are. All the things, right? All the things that we do as moms to just keep the family fed and moving forward. And then I had a professional career to juggle as well. And somewhere after the start of the school year, it was late October, early November, really overwhelmed, really tired, like so tired. And if I'm really honest, the fatigue had been settling in for a while, and I was been stomping around the house, and I had been worn out, and I'd been a little bit fussy, more than usual. And I thought to myself, the only thing that is going to save my life and theirs right now is the sexy girl roll from my favorite sushi restaurant. That was it. It was the only thing that I could possibly think of that would get me through the next 24 hours. So I called my favorite sushi restaurant, put my order in, ordered that, and I was like, and a whole bunch of things with noodles. I don't even care. Just whatever you've got, right? Because I'm also supposed to feed the children and my husband. And I drive down there and the lights were off. And the doors were locked. And I thought, maybe there's a back door. And so I'm like walking around the building like a creeper trying to figure out how to get into my emergency sushi roll. And there was no openings. There was no holes in the building. There was nobody there. And so I picked up the phone. I was like, hi, I put in an order. Like, where's my order? And they said, oh, well, it's right here. I said, not right here. Your doors are locked. And they said, oh, which restaurant did you call? And I thought, you know, that immediate moment of like, this is not going to go well. Something is terribly wrong. And I said, well, I called the one on the Facebook listing that's on this street and the 503 number. And that's the one I called. And they went, oh, you called our sister restaurant. I said, oh, okay. Where's my sushi? And the guy goes, oh, we're in Montana. Now, for any of you that are not super familiar with geography, Montana is not the next city over to Oregon. Those are not cities, those are states, and there is some in between. And I burst into tears. It was not my proudest moment. It was actually fairly ridiculous looking back, but I picked up the phone after that. I called my husband and said, my sushi's in Montana. And he had the audacity to reply with, it's okay, honey. We'll figure it out when you get home. And I looked at my phone like it had grown some kind of like tentacles. And I think smoke might have started coming out my ears because the next thing I remember was, we'll figure out nothing. We'll be doing no such thing. We'll solve no more problems. We'll figure out no more stuff. We'll write no more agendas. And he goes, honey, you don't seem okay. And more waterworks continued. I ended the phone call. I drove myself home and my husband met me outside and was like, babe, you got to take a break. You've got to take a time out, whatever is happening here. And he did the best he could in those moments. But the reality was I was in what I call basement brain in those moments. And I was so unbelievably overwhelmed in the lead up to that time that I just hadn't been taking care of myself. And it can't be overstated the importance in our leadership about emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is not just an aspect of how we deal with like the people around us. It's so much bigger than that. There's 5 dimensions that we talk about, and it is arguably the most important leadership quality out there. And it's so overlooked in that it doesn't just like settle in and one thing and then we never have to think about it again. Our social awareness and our own emotional self-awareness and our self-management, it slides with our fatigue and our overwhelm. And when we're in our best self, when we're able to be creative and innovative and jump the line between the lenses we see the world through, there's so much to it in considering, how are you today? Where are you at on your elevator? Are you in penthouse? Are you in your best self? Are you kind of in the middle there with like ego maybe getting in the way? Are you navigating some fatigue and maybe struggling to bounce between creative and tactical self? Or are you in toddler mode, or what I like to consider the second floor, right? That's when we start to lose our minds because we got the wrong colored sippy cup, but in adult land, right? I got the wrong colored sippy cup and I lost my mind. Lost my mind. And that sent me all the way into basement. Now, that's a lot of little inconveniences over a long period of time that took me from my very best self in February of 2020 to I am not okay in November of 2020, right? But there are so many different kinds of impacts to your day and your life that could take you from penthouse all the way down in one foul swoop, right? You could have a major interruption where there is a cancer diagnosis or an unexpected accident or a major financial crisis that takes you from things are great and I'm my best self to holy smokes, everybody back up, right? And there is so many times throughout our leadership journey, both as a parent, as a team lead, as a leader in our community, that we have to be aware of where I'm at on my elevator and where you're at on your elevator. And I think it's really important that we talk about that in a little bit more depth. I think it's important that we recognize how we go from having a basement, which is our survival mechanisms. We're all born with that. We start with that. These tiny humans show up in the world and they know to cry for food. They know to survive. And then we grow and we have experiences. And so our toddlers maybe have 2 floors, but really the wrong colored sippy cup, the cookie broken in half. What other kinds of things can you think of that all of a sudden you're like, oh no, that ruined their lives that day, right? So they only have 2 floors. So they only have this much distance between my best self and not today. Don't do it, right? Now, as we grow some more, as we develop, as we mature, as we have more experiences through maybe sports or family, cultural interactions, or maybe the support we have in our lives with religious bodies or youth group, right? We have more experiences. And so by the time we're teenagers, we have 6, 7, maybe 8 floors, but we still don't have a lot of distance between best self and today is not the day, right? I like to call this not today, boss, whoever boss is. And so our teenagers start to have big moments where they go back down to the basement. And it can be to us as functional adults, it can feel like some of the silliest things, right? As a mom of teenagers, I certainly have these big moments where I'm like, hey, do you want ice cream today? And they're like, oh, and you're like, I don't know what I just did, right? I don't know what just happened. I do not know why that felt so big. Or the moment that you're like, hey, we've had friends over every day for 700 days in a row. Would it be okay if we just didn't one night? And you literally just like took their legs out from underneath them. It was the exact same response as I gave you the wrong colored sippy cup. It was huge, right? Because they went from 8th floor down to basement because you literally just ruined their lives. Now, some adults might only have 8 floors. And that happens a lot when they navigate crisis and trauma through their lives. Because the way we build more floors is to take accountability for what we've learned, to take ownership of an experience that we've had and say, I did have a part in that. I do have something to learn from that. In some circumstances, people are never taught how to take accountability, how to have ownership in a scenario. And so there's a lot of deflecting. There's a lot of deflecting ownership and a lot of opportunities to go, well, this happened to me, So when we don't have that opportunity to learn from experience, we don't build another floor. So adults that grow up with a lot of trauma, they probably have very similar responses that you'll see with your teenagers or my teenagers or somebody's teenagers that you know. If you've ever spent time with a teenager, you know that you can have big swings from I'm great today, my penthouse, my best self is only this high. And then other adults have more opportunities. They have more time to grow more experiences. And I want to talk about some of those things that grow those floors because I think that's important to recognize. For me, I served in the United States Navy. That grew a lot of floors for me. I learned a lot at 18 until I was discharged from the military with a pretty severe injury. And so I navigated and learned from both of those things, and those built additional floors in my life. And then I went to college. That's more experiences, more floors, more learning. From there, I moved all over the country. I've lived in many states and gotten to experience many different subcultures within the United States, which is awesome, right? To recognize that my story is not the only story out there, to recognize your story is truth and my story is truth because both of those experiences really happened. That's powerful, and it builds floors because it builds perspective. So, some of the things that might take us down floors are those inconveniences, are those big life interruptions. They might just be little irritations, but you'll recognize as you have more floors, you have more tolerance to those interruptions, right? Because you're clear up here in penthouse going, my best self is fine today. So even when traffic's in my way, even when I got kind of a snarky email from Bob down the hall that I don't really like, it's not that big of a deal, right? But if I'm hovering over here on my second floor because I'm exhausted, that snarky email from Bob might send me into the basement, right? So it's really important that we recognize we all have a penthouse, but our penthouse is different. Our penthouse floor, the number, the distance is different for different ones of us. We all have a basement, and some would argue they have a sub-basement. But I think until you've experienced something really traumatic, you don't necessarily know what that is. Now, okay, Dr. K, what does all this have to do with my leadership? Well, I have just given you a whole lot to consider in your social awareness and your self-awareness. What if you created language in your teams that created safety, psychological safety to be specific, where you all had freedom and flexibility and safety to say, I can't today. I'm on my fourth floor. I've had way too much happen this week. I'm feeling really overwhelmed. Because when I'm on my fourth floor, that's not the day to innovate. That's not the day that we're like, hey, 27 new projects. Woo woo. That is the day that we're like, how can I support you? How do I show up for you? What is one thing that we can accomplish together today that will make you feel like you have a little bit of control back in that space? Well, that is not the day that we bring up a brand new technology system and try to implement all the new things in the workforce, right? We do that in Penthouse because in Penthouse, we jump the line between creative self and task self and safety and risk. And we're able to navigate the lenses of different personalities really effectively, right? As adults, people are like, well, duh, good communication, easy breezy. Except it's not. But we do it effectively when we've been practicing it, when we're aware of it, when we're not wiped out, because we know that we want to be the most effective in our leadership that we can be. We're focused on influence and impact. So for instance, each personality type, and there's 4 of them that I talk about, has their superpowers, which is their penthouse self. And then in the basement, we have the space where we're like, I need to watch out for that. So in our leadership, we can start to go, you appear to be close to a meltdown. And because I think it's really important to think through each of those parts, I want to share with you what those superpowers might look like and what those communication strategies might look like. And really importantly, because today's conversation is leading in crisis, how do I recognize when my team, when my family, when the people I'm interacting with on the street are at their wits' end? How do I recognize when they're at their near basement? Not my near basement. Those realities, those responses, those reactions are not going to be the same. But let's look at those 4 personalities quickly. My way is the first one. My way personality operates in the world with a lens of, but can you try my idea first? They are my global strategic thinker. They don't like to be in the weeds. They don't like to navigate the small details. They like to look at a problem and go, poof, here it is. I have solved it. Now, when they're operating in their penthouse, they operate outside of ego. They operate in a space where they're happy to facilitate conversation and answer a lot of questions. But as my way starts to sink in their elevator, ego starts to get in the way really quickly. And so because their core values are knowledge and competence, when somebody asks them a clarifying question, it can feel like they're calling them stupid, right? And so then we start to see some of those potentially like teenager moments. And then we get a little further south in those basement moments, and our my ways are really likely to completely disengage from team activities. They're really likely to just stop participating because it's too much effort to clue you in to how I am thinking. Don't want to do it. But on that penthouse, I jump the line and I consider all those different communication strategies really effectively. Now, the next type that I'm going to talk about is fun way. My fun way operates with a motto of, what's the worst that can happen? Now think about that from a really well-developed, mature adult. What's the worst that can happen? That's the person that's like innovating and trying new things. And that's awesome. That's awesome in an organization. That's awesome in a family. But think about it from a teenager. How often have you gone, oh, they're not going to think about all the ways that could go wrong, right? They're not going to think about it because they don't have enough experience. Well, an adult fun way responding from the 6th floor is also going to start being spontaneous in a way that they're not considering consequences. Now, if you go a little bit further, start thinking about what that looks like from a toddler on that 2nd floor, or even worse in the basement. They can become rude and incredibly defiant because they're like, I'm going to do what I want and you can't tell me nothing. So that's awesome to be around, right? But imagine if that's you. Imagine if that's me. Imagine if it's both of us in an organizational setting like ruh-roh. That becomes really problematic, right? Now, jumping to the next quadrant in my personality assessment, I like to look at the nice ways. And nice ways are driven by compassion and harmony. And their motto for operating is, can't we all just get along? Right? They are really good at bringing groups together. They are really good at blending and bonding and connection. They are our connectors. They are the glue that keeps teams together because they're the first one to look at somebody and go, I don't think that meeting went very well for so-and-so, and I think we should go talk to him, right? They're picking up all of those different things really effectively. So that's awesome in the penthouse. That's awesome in best self. But if we start navigating those lower floors, our nice ways are really conflict averse. They are really resistant to conflict when they're navigating those lower floors. And so they will lie to save face, or they will completely avoid. They will completely disengage from relationships and activities. So you can start to see how that elevator becomes really important for a nice way to recognize, where are you? How do I support you? Because if you're on that 6th floor, I still as a leader in your circle have an opportunity to help you set goals and climb back up that ladder. If you're in those really low floors, I have some responsibility to create safety in making sure that you don't feel like you have to run from conflict. Now, my last one is my right way, and they are a rules exist for a reason group. And I love my right ways. They keep us out of jail. Love that, right? They are the ones that are like, there's a rule for that. There's a procedure for that. There's a policy that we need to look at. Now, that's important in an organization. Those are really important people. And in fact, they are critical to our innovators, right? Even though there's a tension that exists there, they help innovators turn visionary ideas into like things that people can actually work on. Instead of living out in the clouds, they create opportunities to actually turn things into a process. Who would have thought? So in the Penthouse, my right ways are super good at creating policy and procedure and systematizing things. They also jump the line. They can go, oh, I can focus on the people for a minute. I can focus on the risk. I can assess risk and mitigate it, right? They're great risk mitigators. In the lower levels, closer to that basement, oh boy, they become frozen by ambiguity, frozen by the gray area. And so think about what that starts to look like. I'll give you an example. I have a connection of mine that is a right way to his very core. You guys, he reads the instructions to Candyland every single time, even when he's playing with toddlers. Even when you're like, the goal is not to win against 2-year-olds. The goal is to keep them out of the kitchen for like 6 minutes, right? So we don't need to read the rules. We need to let the rules go sometimes. We need to poof, gone. Our right ways, you'll see them early in their lives, really feel a lot of anxiety over lack of clarity. And so you can actually really identify these behaviors early if you're watching for it, which I think is super fascinating, super cool to start looking at your kids going, oh no, oh no, right? And I have 3 boys, and I sit and I watch them and I'm like, oh, there's that again. But I also recognize the superpowers that they bring if I create environments where they can become. And I can apply that to my work life as much as my family life. I can look at the center ring in my target, and that's personalities. I believe with everything in my being that we are born with a personality. It is soul driven, and they are as unique as fingerprints, and yet there are some patterns. And then the next round that I talk about is experiences, and that's all those things that built those floors throughout somebody's life. That's all of the things that impacted who they have become that shapes their beliefs, which is that next ring. And their beliefs lead to the actions that they take. I do the things I do because I believe it will end in a result. That is my outer ring. A lot of times in our leadership, we tackle things at that 4th circle, which is actions. I stop and I go, don't take a cookie out of the cookie jar. And I slap somebody's hand. In the workplace, you can't do that. Also at home, you probably shouldn't slap anybody's hand anymore. But we slap hands instead of having a meaningful conversation to get to the inner circles and communicate about beliefs and experiences. Now, the personality types is what allows us the language we need to communicate with somebody through, right? I know that my fun ways and my ways are a lot more action oriented. And so I need to tell them what to do and then why. And with my fun ways, I need to let them figure out how. I need to give them some space to explore. My nice ways, I need to have stories. I need to have connection. I need to have meaningful human interaction. I can't go right into the task because it will feel abrupt and mean. My right ways, I probably need to get on a standard operating procedure about all the rules about cookie eating, right? The correct way to tear the Oreo in half and how many Oreos you can eat in a day based on size, weight, and body mass index. No, I'm joking. Don't do that. But if you do, I want a copy of it. So it's important that we communicate with people from a lens that they're willing to receive the information. That is easier to do in the penthouse. It is absolutely positively easier to do from those top floors when you have perspective and creativity and the ability to jump between the lines so I can project something different so that you can receive what you need to receive. The beauty in organizations and our families, when we do some of this work intentionally, is we create common language. And that common language, the power of common language in our teams and our groups and our families to be able to say, not today, but I'm still safe. As a leader, you need to constantly be reassessing, what floor are you on, right? And as a leader, if you've done a good job creating a team of psychological safety, the beauty is you also have permission to be on some of those lower floors sometimes because you are not immune from crappy things happening. You are not immune from interruptions, inconveniences, and crisis. You are not immune from any of that. Pandemic hit us globally. It was a worldwide crisis. But there is a lot of power in that common language and asking better questions. What is one thing I can do to support you today? Not how you doing? How you doing? Fine, I'm fine. I'm fine. Everything's fine. You're not fine, right? We need to ask better questions. We need to support our teams with more intention. And to do that, you have to be a better leader and constantly be calibrating, building that self-awareness, measuring your social awareness, checking yourself, making sure your ego was left at the door, right? Making sure that you are not running around the house, stomping all over the place, and sushi is going to break you, right? When you get to that space that sushi is going to break you, things have gone wrong. From the basement, we have to have tiny baby wins to get back out of basement. And then everything above that is about goal setting, achieving those things, and reflecting on what we've accomplished. I'm so excited that you were here with me today. I'm so excited that I got to share Leading in Crisis and the Elevator tool with you. I really, really hope that that is something that you can take with you in a quick check in your leadership practice. And it is a practice because you will swing and miss. You will have setbacks, but being able to recover more quickly, being able to calibrate more honestly, being able to check yourself more frequently is really powerful for you in who you are. And if you show up in your best self, or at least are honest with where you are at any given time, people will respect that vulnerability. People will have an opportunity to know you, and you will have far more opportunity to have more impact and more influence. And ultimately, that's what leadership is all about, right? More impact, more influence, more effectiveness. And then we change the world.